Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Sorry, what the hell is... what's going on, Artie?
Oh, I'm on my balcony. Can you see me okay?
Oh,
Oh.
my.
Right.
Oh.
Well, is that
Yes.
allowed? Is that allowed? Are we allowed to change location like that without telling any of the other hosts? I don't know.
You're not the boss
looks-
of me.
I don't know.
It's amazing. Look at your setup. That's phenomenal. You've got
Thank you.
You've got your extremely large microphone. You've got your wine. And can I say, Artie, cheers.
Cheers.
I've
Extra
actually...
mess.
I've actually started to slow down.
You're past that point already.
Yeah, this is a coffee, so might as well do that. So thank you for joining me on this extra mess. Thanks to everyone who's watching and commenting. We obviously had to pull an emergency episode because of the incident yesterday, in which mermaids.
Can I first of all just say...
I don't know if I can even say it. What happened?
Oh my god! Yeah.
Yeah, Helen. What? No. Should I explain what happened first?
Yes, go for it, man. Go for it.
Okay. Mermaids, the organization that collects homophobic parents and allows them to surgically operate on their gender non-conforming children. An incredibly progressive cause that many people are fully in support of in the UK. I don't know how to say this, but essentially there's a new mayor of Bangor in Wales, and they identify with their pronouns being they and them.
Can I just interject?
They're a lovely guy.
At this point. Can I interject at this point? Because I hadn't realised until today that actually he's not even from Bangor. He's not Welsh.
Yeah. But
He's from Harrow.
Is he Harrow? Oh, wait.
Yes.
Hold it. We've got to tell people the story. We've got to tell people the story.
All right.
And mermaids, they wrote a tweet. They wrote a tweet congratulating him on his recent. Sorry, Artie, you go.
Oh, Graham, I'm so sorry. I know it's
I'm
just a
so
very
sorry,
difficult
Graham.
time.
I'm
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I'm so sorry.
The binary is just so awful.
It was, and I know, it's such a disappointment. I'm so
They
sorry.
misgendered him. They misgendered him.
Uh-oh. I think you just did too, though.
What? Oh, no!
That's it. We're done. Show's over. Oh my God. The him, them
That is
thing
very
is
funny.
ridiculous.
It's really, it was great. But anyway, they misgendered this young white man who's won an election. And then they had to delete the tweet, right? But then it got even better because mermaid, it showed so much. And Helen, I want to ask you about what it showed about mermaids when they did this. But mermaids wrote an apology, and they said, "Oh, we're sorry about that. So we'll aim to do better in the future, and maybe we'll delete Grammarly, right? Which is people may not know.
Winky, wink, little smile.
Did they? A little wink. Oh, Grammarly. You know what they are at Grammarly? They're a bunch of bigots. And,
you got to throw someone under the bus. Whenever you screw up and misgender someone, if there's no one to throw under the bus, you can just take your autocorrect software.
Yes.
But you forget.
Because you, for some reason, have zero understanding of the fact that Grammarly have obviously written a bot which searches for their name.
Yes, I know. They forgot that Grammarly is not just something that sits on their computer and doesn't have a consciousness. Grammarly is an actual team of people.
Yes,
whose business.
The singularity has arrived at Grammarly.
Yeah. It was glorious. Grammarly immediately got in touch and said, "We take this very seriously. We provide they/them pronouns for all such occasions. Can you send us a screenshot?" And I love that. Can you send us a screenshot? And I thought that was quite exciting as well because it was them. It was them, like usually people genuflect to mermaids. They're almost like a holy organization, especially among Americans. And this time it was like, hang on a sec, you're fucking lying. We know, you know what I mean? They just
Fucking
came straight
lying.
out and said it. You fucking liars. And
Well, did they actually think Grammarly would know what this person's preferred pronouns are and change
this is
them?
my point. Did they actually know? Like Grammarly saw this picture, and obviously, if you see the picture, like
it has blue hair.
But like I said, the singularity has arrived at Grammarly. So Grammarly, like they saw the picture and they're like, no,
that's
man,
right,
he.
So yeah, go on.
But there's even more. I saw somebody else had done an excellent thing. They also had Grammarly, and they took Mermaid's tweet, and in it they've used us instead of the rather more obvious we.
Mm-hmm.
And Grammarly has actually said, no, you should change this to we. But they didn't. So they clearly never used it at all. And it's so fucking brilliant. It's brilliant. Like, because the grammar in it is shit. And somebody's like, actually, if you do this, it changes us to we. And I thought that was even better almost than the Grammarly tweet.
Yeah, the whole thing was lovely. But then they had to.
This mayor? Oh, sorry. Go on. Yeah.
Well, I'll just give the ending to this. They had to delete the Grammarly tweet because they're going to get sued, which contained the apology. So presumably they had to write another apology. You know,
it just keeps going. It's and they're just straight up liars. Everybody's looking at that, being like, "You're just cheap children liars."
Yes,
you know?
I think that's the point, right? There's a few layers, aren't there? And it's really amusing. At one point, you know, and it's really amusing because it shows, doesn't it, that the whole thing is one big performative sham. Yeah. And that really mermaids know that person running their social media account. They fucking know. Everyone knows. Everyone knows. Like he was like, oh, actually, the emperor's not wearing. Oh, oops. Yeah.
It was great.
So
it was great. But it also shows their cynicism.
But I think what it really shows more than anything is their casual, shameless ability to lie. And if they've casually lied about this, what else are they prepared to lie about? Yeah. I mean, what else are they prepared to lie about? And also, they didn't even think that they would get caught by this. Yeah. So it's not just that they're casual liars, but they totally believe, like that Family Guy clip where they're like, oh, actually, no, you can do whatever you like. They've sort of believed that aspect of it too. There's, all the layers add up to this organization should absolutely not have anything to do with the mental health and medicalization of children.
Yes, absolutely. And, I still see people, companies and famous people promoting them, still kind of talking about them. It's like, how, one thing I've started to think in terms of is that we live in a tiered reality, like some right-wing QAnon lunatics, they believe one thing, and left-wing gender hippies, they believe another thing, and people who believe in reality believe in a third thing, and all these belief systems are existing in tiers. I mean, people call it the what do you call it, echo chamber, but I think it's actually less an echo chamber, more kind of tiered progression through life.
Yeah. Now, where did this come from? This tiered reality? You've mentioned this before once, and it really piqued my interest. Is that something you invented? Can you tell us more about this?
Well, no, it's only that, we now, like, basically, if you read The Guardian, you have no idea what's going on in the gender debate. You might well think, for instance, that Abigail Shrier is a complete lunatic who's just spreading right-wing lies, because The Guardian will never publish anything that will talk to the quality of her research or anything like that, because their readers are American wokesters, and they won't have it. They literally won't have it. So anyone who reads The Guardian is living in one tier of reality. And then you have, the people like us who believe in reality and so on. And we are now in a very weird position because we don't know who the fuck to believe. Because I used to believe The Guardian. I don't believe. I mean, I look back on all my positions now, including my positions on highly emotive, contentious issues that I was always 100% sure of, and I just don't know anymore, because I really need to unpick what I believe and what I know to be true and what the evidence says from what people like Owen Jones were telling me, who I now realize is a complete political actor.
He's a charlatan, isn't it?
He's a complete political actor.
It's all about political. But I want to just go back to one thing that you're saying about belief. I think what this has shown is that mermaids don't believe what they're selling. They don't believe it. They don't believe that this chap is neither a man nor a woman. They completely believe he's a man, and they slipped up in the performative political aspect around it. I mean, that's they believe in the politics of it, but they don't believe in the actual reality of it. And those two things are very different.
That's true. That came up a lot in religious debates back in my history of having been, sort of a new atheist activist, that there's a difference between professed beliefs and true beliefs. People profess to believe things because it's part of being part of the tribe, but they don't actually believe them. You just have to profess to believe them. And you're seeing a little bit of that here. People are professing to believe these things without even thinking about whether they actually do or not. It's funny, to actually decide whether you believe something, you have to process it and analyze it. And most people just don't even want to do that. They're just like, my tribe says we believe this. I don't want to actually go through the, spend the calories in mental exercise and actually processing whether I have a conclusion of whether I believe it or not. I just rather not process it and just say I believe it because my team tells me to.
And you know what? Like, having been one of those people myself to some extent, I mean, I always tried to sort out the information for myself and make sure I was arguing from a position of knowledge. But I can be no longer sure that I had all the information because of the way the left-wing press has just been extraordinary on this issue,
Yeah, and I've still blinded myself every day. I'm seeing little things where I'm like, I just have these assumptions about some viewpoint of Jordan Peterson.
Exactly.
Or something. And I'm just like, I have to go back and reanalyze everything now.
Absolutely.
Because actually, as a general rule of thumb, it isn't a bad start to think these are the people who I admire in other arguments that they've made. And in general, I think that what they have said is right. It's not a bad start to then think, okay, so if they are saying something about a certain subject, that chances are I'll start, that can be my Bayesian prior on how what I believe as well. However, I think what this has taught all of us is that you have to, because, there are people who I admire in many other things that they've said, but on this, they've been shit. And worse than shit, because it's been like they have just thrown women under like the horse's hooves, should we say?
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good way of putting it.
Suffragettes there.
Yeah.
Got that.
No, it's absolutely.
Because, you don't have the time in society to just look at everything, and therefore
this is what I was going to say.
Reasonably good starting point.
However, Helen, let me add something to that, Helen.
Yes, go for it. I can just drink my wine.
Sorry, Helen. I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to say, I really want
honestly, why am I on the bottom?
Sorry, you're right. You should.
Why are you on the bottom? No.
I'm so sorry. No, that changes right there. No, I'll put myself on the bottom and then interrupt you. How about that? What I was going to say, Helen, I was just going to back up one little thing you said, because we are now bombarded with so much information that you're absolutely right. It's not individuals' fault that say they believe trans women are women, and it's exactly like gay rights and blah blah blah. It's not their fault. They've got busy lives. Everyone's got busy lives. Everyone has to be doing other things. There's only a few of us who are so outraged by what's happening to women that we've decided to make it part of our lives to fight it.
Right.
There's only a few of us like that. We have the energy to do that. A lot of people don't, and a lot of the women, especially the feminists who are in this, I mean, I have so much admiration for them because you'll find, like JL, for instance, JL, who writes my War on Women updates every week. It's not her job. She's not a journalist, but she has to do this because journalists aren't doing their jobs.
That's right.
The people who should be sorting out information in a fair and accurate manner have deserted their posts, and we have to do it. And it's exhausting. So I do have a lot of sympathy for people who haven't caught up quite yet.
Yeah, I call them the sort of friendly unawares, the ones who are friendly and unaware. I was just talking to a very loyal friend last night who's been very decent to me about this. I've been able to open up to him and share, parts of my online persona with him. He's even seen the show, but he's still asking me, like, I don't quite understand why you're so engaged in this, like why it matters so much to you. And he asked me, you know, how many people, how many young, you know, the ROGD phenomenon, how many girls are we talking about here? And I said, in all of the United States and Canada, it's 2% of the entire female population under the age of 20. And his jaw just fell on the floor. And that was the moment when he was like, I get it now. I honestly thought it was just a small number. So it's things like that. I was writing it before about how there's sort of two groups of people who are our enemies. The friendly unawares who totally, if you tell them about, you know, men in women's prisons, self-ID, women in sports, all this, the puberty blockers, they're just like, that's all awful. I fully agree. That just sounds completely terrible in principle. But then they'll say it's not really happening in a big enough, or if it's happening, it's minimal enough that it doesn't really matter. So they're like, yes, all this stuff is absolutely terrible, but it's not happening, right? So then you've got this entire other group, the true believers, who are like, all this stuff is absolutely happening everywhere, but it's great, right? The two groups that oppose us, we actually have everything in common with each other. The unawares and the true believers. The unawares have a lot in common with us because we both agree that this stuff is terrible. We just don't agree on whether it's happening or not. And then the true believers, we both agree that this stuff is happening all the time. We just don't agree on whether it's good or bad. But the two together, they have nothing in common, these two groups.
But there's an example of what I mean by tiered reality. Like there's three different groups of people who live in the same world, but have just completely random ideas about what's actually going on, you know?
Yeah, and the only reason they side with each other against us, even though we actually me and either side would have more in common with them together, is that they together can both tell themselves that they're fond of trans. Trans is a happy story, you know? Yeah. And we are raining on the parade with sad news about how, yes, this is really happening and it's really bad. And when you put those two facts together, you get a fucking nightmare, you know? Yeah, it's crazy. So it's totally crazy.
Because we're just right wing, so it doesn't really matter.
It was great though. JL actually, who I mentioned just there, she sent me a piece about that mayor last night, and I was like, I couldn't remember what the guy's name was, so I was like, who's this? And she said, you know, the guy in the misgendering story. And I said, oh yeah, let's do. What have you got? You know, and he turns out to have bullied this.
He was the guy that bullied Helen Mary Jones, Helen Mary Cymru. Yes, because
until she had to resign and delete her Twitter account and stuff like that, you know.
Yes, I remember. I was really disappointed with that because I thought she was great. Yeah, and she's
really Welsh, right?
And she's a trans ally. Let's remember that. You know, a trans ally who started an organization for trans people all over the UK, and this fucking prick brought her down. You know?
And she's, you know, but she's an old woman, and so it doesn't matter, you know, because some bloke from Harrow with green hair who hasn't got an ounce of Welsh in him, who's now mayor of Bangor.
He was from Harrow. I mean, isn't it amazing?
The whole thing is insane.
But and these students who elected him, what did they do?
He went to Bangor Uni like 5 years ago. So you know, this is what happens. So it's all sort of. No, somebody's asking, isn't Harrow not in Wales? And I'm like, no, Harrow is in North London, man.
Is there a different Harrow? No, you'd know, Helen.
Well,
is there not a Harrow in Wales?
Come on, it doesn't start with Llan. So, you know, I'm going to say it isn't in Wales.
Okay. But,
you know, have L's and W's in it. Everything in Welsh is the L's and W's. That's why they call it Wales. It's just W's.
This is something that I really want to. I'm sure I've said this to you before. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite images to do with this whole debate, right?
Like the only trans in the village.
Which is but to take another cultural touchstone, Bugs Bunny. I know I've said, you know, some of you may have heard this before. Bugs Bunny. All through Bugs Bunny, right? Or let's say with what's his name? Yosemite Sam, who was the cowboy with the big red mustache, and he would shoot the guns in the air and get really angry, and Bugs used to drive him nuts, you know. And finally, he gets so angry that Yosemite Sam would be about to blow Bugs' brains out. And Bugs would run around a corner. I'd come back, and he'd have lipstick on. And, I love that. Yeah. And a wig, and he'd be going, and the music would go, and the next thing Yosemite Sam is like, boom, you know, and falls in love with him. Not only falls in love with him, but marries him. He marries Bugs Bunny. So he not only, and that to me is what this movement is like. This guy, this fucking guy who got elected mayor, is a young, white, privileged bloke from Harrow, right? He puts on a bit of blue tinge in his hair. He calls himself non-binary, and everyone's like, where'd he go? Where'd that white guy go? You know what I mean?
It's incredible, isn't it? And non-binary is the worst. It's so funny. I've had such an evolution on non-binary. That was one of the last ones I was still kind of sympathetic to in my sort of transformation on the roller coaster ride of becoming worn out by this movement. Like there's a band I really like called Lower Dens. The lead singer who's
they're
female.
great. I love Lower Dens.
Yeah, and the lead singer is a non-binary person who's a very androgynous female person with very androgynous persona and identity in presentation. And I always thought that was a good example of a sort of true, where it seemed appropriate to call this person non-binary because they seemed, and this person always said they didn't really mind what pronouns you used on them. So like they weren't uptight about it. And I thought I like this. There are some people who are just very androgynous, very butch. You can sort of tell that they're kind of female usually. They almost always are. But,
Yeah.
But, but still, I just thought this seemed sympathetic. I was very sympathetic to calling this person non-binary as recently as like less than 2 years ago, even. But I had a complete change of heart because now I'm seeing how non-binary is just such a lot of men who just want to grab all the privilege of trans identity and all the power and all the misogyny you can commit when you take that label. Yes. But they don't even want to have to change their presentation. They don't even want to have to bother to buy a $2 wig, they still, then they can just take non-binary and it's the best of all worlds. You don't have to do anything. You can be an outright ass. So I really find it more dangerous. I honestly thought it was kind of the more sympathetic part of the trans umbrella or whatever. And now I'm just seeing the exact opposite. It's so toxic.
I
genuinely, I always thought it was a scam.
I always thought it was a scam.
Times I've said, look, this will be it. This is the tipping point. This will be it. And I thought this idea of, non-binary, like some chap coming along and saying, but no, I'm actually non-binary and therefore I need all of these protections. I thought, this is it. This is going to be the point when everyone's like,
it never is. It never is.
But no, still not really there. Although there has been some reasonable news this week, hasn't there? I think
there's been some
more
good
and more
news.
People are waking up. There was the
where you are
toilets thing. Yes, I'm sorry. Where we are. Yes,
it'll get there. It'll get there, Artie. Hopefully sooner rather than later before people.
But I do think.
So will I.
This before, haven't we? But I do think we've spoken about this before. If if one or two countries start to say, actually, we're coming down the other side of the Alps now, then other countries will sort of think, look, I think, hang on, I don't want to be last. Yes. I don't want to be last to the party. So I do think it matters. But the toilets thing, I think, has been quite good news this week.
I'll tell you a great thing about excuse me.
Said, actually, men and women do need separate toilet provision. They actually seem to have listened. They asked the public responded, and they have said, yeah, okay. And I think one of the really interesting points that they made was, who has actually asked for this? Who has been asking, and what is the evidence that this is required? And I think such a lot of this movement relies on the idea, or pushing the idea, that this is so necessary. Like, this is absolutely so necessary, and any delay in pushing this forward will result in so many deaths, etc., that there's no time to give evidence. You just have to do it. You just
I know, me. Like Stonewall opposing the consultation on conversion therapy. Like, that was so revealing. No, you're not allowed to talk about it, because they're so determined to conflate trans conversion therapy with gay conversion therapy. And they're absolutely terrified that people will realize that trans affirmative medicine is gay conversion therapy.
It is gay, but it's like the time pressure is like, in North America, we have all these infomercials on television that are like, don't wait, act now, 7 minutes left. You got 7 minutes or you're not going to get your free, burger maker device if you don't order,
It's all. I mean, I can't wait until the thing that wraps it all up comes along. It needs to be a documentary or something. But when people like a big documentary that talks about the Denton's document, that would really make a difference. Because people don't like being fooled and people don't like being tricked. And I think that when they realized that, oh my God, there was an actual law firm who was advising these people to try not to speak to the public, to try not to let the public know what they were doing. They are going to go, what the fuck? What, really? Yeah. And I just hope that someone comes along and does it. It sounds like there's a good documentary coming along soon called The Woke Reformation, which might go some way to doing that, but we'll see. But can I just say, there was one other thing. I just thought I'd point out something interesting. On my, I noticed on Twitter that the people who were coming out most in defense of mermaids, it was interesting. There were a bunch of different groups, but of varying degrees of funniness. Like the non-binary people were very funny because they just did not accept any apology. They were really funny.
Somebody said they should call the police.
They were absolutely outraged, and it was just hilarious. But there was another group, and they were defending mermaids to the hilt. And can you guess what group that was? Yeah. AGP men. AGP males, trans-identified males, were definitely, I could just from my own scientific kind of observation, were defending mermaids to the hilt. And it reminded me, as if we needed reminding, that part of the reason mermaids are where they are is because AGP men are able to use mermaids to pretend that there's something deeper and more beautiful and more authentic about their fetish than merely being a fetish.
Exactly right.
They're able to say, look at these poor kids, these kids that mermaids are helping, so they can become happy people like me. And the truth is that there is no similarity between these AGP men.
And there's actually, and it's very sinister, isn't it, to see
it really is
grown-up adult men painting this sort of counterfactual narrative that says, had I been allowed to take puberty blockers when I was a child, I would have been so happy now. Like, all of this is just, it's, we would actually need some sort of counterfactual machine to go back and see whether this is the truth or not. But to paint this as if it is the absolute truth. So these men who have got their full sexual function, I mean, unless they've maybe had the operation, but most of them in possession of their full sexual function and have certainly at some point had a full adult sexual function. These are adults pushing for kids not to have this. And I think it's the most unconscionable thing, the pretense that they would have loved this. Because quite frankly, had they not had this sexual function, they probably wouldn't have ended up as AGP because it is sexual.
Exactly.
I mean, who knows? Again, counterfactual machine necessary. However, it's this just the certainty with which they're willing to say this, and people are listening and saying, "Oh yes, I agree." It's
not certainty.
Go on, Ardy.
It's not certainty. It's deep cynicism. It's just, I think these people are just so driven by their sex drives and so focused on them. When an identity is such a your sexual fantasies should not spill over into your sense of your identity. That's a dangerous thing. It's kind of destabilizing sometimes. And when that happens, they will stop at nothing to show the world that they're really women, because they need that. That's another factor in AGP, is that to admit to yourself that you're just a man who fantasizes about being a woman isn't the same thing as admitting to yourself that you are literally a woman. Because you want to have sex essentially with yourself. You don't want to have sex with a man pretending to be a woman. You want to have sex with an actual, literal woman. So you have to prove to yourself obsessively that you are an actual, literal woman, or you won't be able to achieve quite the sexual satisfaction you want. And they will stop at nothing. They do not care about children's bodies. They do not care about children's integrity, their sexual function, everything. Nothing matters. They will change the subject back to themselves in an instant. Everything else doesn't matter. They will destroy the world. They would burn down the entire continent You know, they just cannot see past their own needs sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's just so frightening. They're just ripping apart children's lives. They're ripping apart women's rights. They're ripping apart gay rights. They can't see what they're doing. They literally can't even see it. They're just burned up with this, I need to be a woman. Nothing matters. And when you challenge them on it, they say, should I just die? They can't, you know. Completely consumed. So I just think it's just so, there's just so much mental health therapy needed for some of these really zealous, ravenous AGPs.
Oh, definitely.
You know?
Definitely.
And obviously, I'm a firm defender of AGP as well, and I get in trouble for that all the time. Because I think we have to understand what it is, and have to find a way for people to express their autogonophilic feelings in a way that functions within the world and within their lives.
That's safe. I always say, whatever you have to do, just don't do it on the street and scare the horses. You know, it's like you know, if you know, and some of the ideas of womanhood that these guys have are so regressive and pornified. You should not be inflicting that on anyone else, especially your workmates and stuff like that.
But you don't need to do that. We have to remember also, autogonophilia is not just the people who are acting as trans-identified. Many more. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Most people who experience autogonophilia handle it and keep it in the bedroom, you know. And even those who do adopt an identity, a lot of people are capable of doing that within some, I think, realm of courtesy. I'm willing to concede that. So it's hard. We have to work. It's not going away. We can't just make autogonophilia go away. So we can't just condemn it wholesale. It's a part of human reality. It exists. Yeah. You know. Yeah.
It is really up to, you know. It is like, but again, it's just like. I think it must be tied as well to, like, I don't know if you saw my post this week that Genevieve, the brilliant Genevieve Gluck did, who's in the chat.
In the comments.
Hi Genevieve, who did on this fucking sex shop for kids that's open somewhere in is it in Canada again? I forget.
I couldn't even look. I saw the headline and I was like, not.
I know. But it's like you when you. I'm sure people who, especially people who hate me and think that everything I say is evil, I'm sure they see that and their brains they just can't get it. They just can't accept that it exists, you know?
No.
But it is literally that. It's a sex shop for kids. They sell
God. It's in
Canada. Sell hackers and all this sort of stuff. I think it was Vancouver, wasn't it?
Oh my God, Vancouver.
She'll tell us. But like, but here's another aspect that I think, I mean, you know, so there's an attempt to make sex. And, you know, my favorite quote about this is from John Waters, who directed Female Trouble and all those movies.
Pink
Flamingos, big gay icon. And he once said, every day I thank God I was born a Catholic because sex will always be dirty to me. You know? And it's so true that sex is something that the more kind of mysterious it is, the better in many ways, you know? So the idea of pushing this stuff on kids, that they have to think about sex as this thing that is in their daily lives and you share it with other people, and it's just one of the worst ideas ever.
No.
It'll create a kind of space future of people who look like the ones in Logan's Run, and everyone wears the same jumpsuits, and they go and they stand around going, "Will you come for our sexual liaison at 5:15?" It'll be like that, you know what I mean?
No, Sasha Ayad and Stella O'Malley talked about that in great detail on their podcast, which again, always listen to it. Gender.
You know, it's only because I know Stella that I don't listen to it. I'm sure it's brilliant. But...
It's good. But we did one. But they were talking about.
I must listen to it. I'm terrible at listening to things my friends do. But go ahead.
It's finding that balance where you have to teach children about sexuality so that they're not completely lost, but you can't make it. You can't demystify it and neuter it. Sexuality is charged. Sexuality is always going to be beneath the surface of society and culture, and that's where the fun and excitement of it comes from. That's where the spark comes from. We don't want to make it like bland and neutral, like, you know, having lunch, having sex. You know, like, no, it's a real force of humanity. It's a special thing that exists in a very special part, almost outside of culture in some ways, but within it in others. Then we have to find a balance with that, and it's not easy to do.
And also, as we know, queer theory, one of the things queer theory tries to do is blur boundaries. You know, as Derrick Jensen points out in that clip, a lot of queer theory kind of leading lights had very dodgy opinions about child-adult sexual relations. Sorry, excuse me, I should call it what it is, rape, child-adult rape. And these are the people who are, informing decisions made by institutions all over the UK who are being influenced by Stonewall.
Honestly, I think it's really, really important as a society that we always watch out for any ideas that start to bring sexuality onto children.
Yeah.
I think, some things we can look at and we can say, yeah, I think that's okay. We can teach kids, maybe not tiny kids, well, maybe, we can teach them that same-sex attraction exists and people can live with each other, etc., bring up children together. But you've got to be careful about anything that starts to talk about sexuality in relation to children. I mean, I don't think it's at all. I think people saying, "Oh my God, look, it's phobic in any way to question this." I think you have to sort of be careful. I think you have to constantly question this, and sometimes you'll be like, "Yeah, this is okay," but constantly question it, and be very wary of people who say to you, "This is phobic of you."
Yes.
Anyone
absolutely.
who calls you any way phobic, I think you have to question, where's this coming from? What's the political angle here? What are they? What is the real agenda? And most of the time, it's probably going to be okay, or maybe not. Some things are phobic, and that's okay. But you kind of have to question it.
And that's the problem with homophobia, when the sort of rhetoric, however you pronounce that word, of the word homophobia has always been a little bit problematic. I think Jane Claire Jones described it the best way, in the most optimistic way, about how phobia referred to the sort of the not fear necessarily as repulsion of gays, and that there was no justifiable moral argument other than just moral disgust. That's the term she used. There's another sense of phobia, as in just like you're just afraid and irrational. And that I just think a lot of anti-gay sentiment didn't come from that kind of phobia. Christian conservative values were very hostile to gay rights in a lot of ways, but they really didn't come from phobia. Framing all anti-gay sentiment and all anti-gay politics as homophobia seemed like such a powerful tool in the 80s and 90s. But now I see that it's sort of unleashed a demon that we can't put back, because now everybody's using that. It works so well. Everyone wants to put phobia on everything, I
wonder, should I try Irish phobia or something, or
oh my God,
or go for, just to protect myself?
What would you call Iberophobia or Hibernophobia?
Can you fire your journalists? They were displaying some Irish phobia the other day when they criticised me for I don't know. Sorry.
Put some Irish in it. Air phobia.
Glitterophobia. Basically, glitterophobia. My favorite thing.
Say with an accent, and you're good.
My favorite thing was when that one who works for the Irish Times said, "I've been receiving many transphobic and fatphobic statements." Fatphobic. That really made me laugh. That was a beauty.
Killing me.
Oh, can I go back to the mermaids thing for a minute, because I'm absolutely sure that there are so many people out there who follow mermaids who are very keen on being really quite pure when it comes to who follows who, because you see people all the time saying, these people are following this particular account who has done this. I'm absolutely certain that there'd be many people now unfollowing mermaids, because why would they want to follow an account that is blatantly lying?
Oh yeah.
I'm absolutely certain that mermaids follower account is just follower account is just going to go right down, because these people have integrity.
Yeah, come on.
And therefore, I'm certain that there are going to be lots of people saying, no, I can't follow account who has clearly, blatantly lied.
You know what I have to say? Some of the non-binary types who got really, really angry, they might actually go through with that. They actually seem to stand behind it.
I'm not talking about them, though.
Who are you talking about? But you know what I mean? I mean, like they really take it seriously. It was very funny reading it, as if as if you look through their timeline, you wouldn't see them calling him a him at some point in their timeline. Bullshit. Every second one will do it. And I hope that Jen, our wonderful assistant Jen, who helps us out with the show, posts a link to the brilliant essay, Pronouns are Rohypnol. Because again, like one of the things that like Helen Lewis and Jessie Single and Katie Herzog are annoyed at me about, it's because I just don't observe pronouns. I observe them for my friends. I observe them for people who aren't misogynists, but I don't observe them for, pedophiles who identify as women or vicious misogynist trolls on Twitter. No, I don't. Or con men who I've had a bit of dealings with. I don't respect their pronouns at all. But also, but because it's come so far, I have to take even a more hardline position, because there's a lot of women who would be very hurt and insulted if I observed pronouns, because they have been so gaslit and abused by these people who have been, going for their jobs, going for their livelihoods and their Twitter accounts.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
What about the cruelty to them? What about what about what they've been through? And of course, those women are just invisible to these pricks. Sorry, that was a bit on the nose.
No, that's true. But I can't believe that I would think that if you were super pro-trans, you would think, of course, we should always reject the pronouns of a pedophile or a abuser, or, because we would want to kick them out of the movement and kick them out of the sort of dignity of trans identity. And they're just like, no, it's just a simple rule. Yeah,
I often think about this, and I think I remember a very interesting thing that Rachel McKinnon once said, or Veronica Ivy, or whatever he's called himself now. He said something like, if you don't agree with sport, if you think that sport isn't that trans women shouldn't play women's sports, then you don't agree with any trans rights. Then you don't agree that trans women are women, and that's the problem. They have really committed to trans women are women line.
Yeah.
So they cannot accept anything, including misgendering pedophiles. They will die on that hill. They will die on the hill that says he shouldn't misgender a pedophile.
And that's why the movement seeks out the extreme cases and highlights them, because they're like, if a rich straight white 1%er banking executive who literally dresses like a skanky secretary once a week at work, can count as fully a woman, then everybody can count as fully a woman, so they're taking, and when this 60-year-old auto mechanic dresses up like a 5-year-old girl, we're going to put this person at the front of the parade to say, even the most extreme cases, if somebody who's just a total cracked out junkie wants to spend the night in a women's shelter because he says his pronouns are she, her, they're just taking these horrible extreme examples and saying, we got to hammer those down. Yeah.
Well, yes, because it's a statement of power, isn't it?
100%.
That's
absolute statement of power. Is to say, don't question this. Look, we're just going to take the piss out of society, and we're just going to say, look, this person's a woman, come at me. And it's such a statement of power. I mean, it really is. Like this whole thing is a massive it's not even a power struggle, is it? Because I see people, this is something that I find amazing. When I was banned off Twitter, I saw all sorts of people saying, oh my God, it's, she's been banned. And I'm thinking, it's incredible, isn't it? That they think that men, like white privileged men, getting a woman banned from somewhere is in any way bucking the norm, for Christ's sake. I mean, of course they've managed to get me banned. Well, of course they have. This is not a surprise. This is not a shock to us, because, yes, you are in power. These people who pretend that they have zero power at all in society, of course they know they have all the power. The fact that they can even get society to believe that they have no power is, in fact,
I think it was like Emmy BL, who's in the comments right now. She said something in one of my videos.
I'm just gonna shout at my husband to maybe bring up the bottle.
I was going to get a refill. How do we arrange that?
But Emmy BL was saying exactly that. I made a video about how, trying to show that a lot of these males who identify as trans women are middle-class straight white men with just, sexual paraphilias who are very fragile emotionally but aren't vulnerable. No one's hurting them. They're just whining all the time about how they feel so sensitive. And Emmy's like, well, the proof that they're not vulnerable is that they can just demand anything they want and get everybody bends over and lets them into women's spaces. Tiffany. Yeah. Somebody, can I just say, everyone in the comments, it's like all our favorite people. We got Tara in there. We got,
I want to say hello to so many people.
Is Sheridan Sinclair in there? Because he wrote a very...
Sheridan's in there.
Hey, Sheridan, I loved your idea. Sheridan had a great idea that we changed the word Karen to Lawrence, because Lawrence is the guy who got the rail company to apologize for saying ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Oh, that was insane.
He got them to apologize. And then, of course, at Christmas, he tweets, coming home for Christmas, yay! He's taking a photograph of a sign that says, ladies and gentlemen, happy Christmas, or something like that, So this is someone who's just found out like this kind of extra cheat button available to white men, the same way it's the new mayor of Bangor did, it's like it just makes the game even easier for white men. Now you can't even say, you're a white man. Because you got blue hair, your pronouns are they, them, you're a special...
think it's green, but okay.
Well, whatever. You know what I mean? Right, it's so and it works. It's just amazing to me that it works.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It's just this is going to collapse so quickly. It's just not going to. But yeah, all the people in the comments. Can I show one thing though? We got.
I'm gonna get a refill. I'll be back in a second.
Okay, you get a refill. I'll just say.
Okay.
Speaking of people in the comments, I love. Rebecca Van Tassel's there. Cara Davis. Oh my God, I love you. But we got a letter. We got a letter from Christine, who's not in the comments today. That was so sweet, and it was just really very moving and touching. Oh, there's Sheridan. Yeah, fan mail, you guys. Fan mail's great.
Yeah, it is. It's just, but I do want to say, something nice about the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, who have come out and said that women need a voice on trans issues. And I think that this is an incredibly important thing that has happened. And I do want to highlight this because what is also incredible is that there was a big piece I think it was in the Times about it. Is he back? I was just starting to talk about the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which the Baroness Faulkner, who has said, because they intervened in the Mayor Forstretta case, so she's done an interview saying, women do need a voice on trans issues.
That's
and
beautiful.
It seems eminently sensible on this. However, some chap picked this up yesterday, tweeted it out, and I mean, lots of people have seen this because I think the wording that he used.
Oh, I think I know which one this is. In fact, I might have.
The new head. If women are allowed to question trans identity,
allowed to question,
this chap has tweeted out as if this is completely fine, completely normal to say if women are allowed to question this, then honestly, slippery slope. If women are allowed to question, I think it's an incredibly important thing to highlight because he's had some pushback. I mean, he's being ratioed, but not to the extent that I would have thought. Because I think there's a lot of people who are thinking, if women are allowed to question, but the wording is so shocking, isn't it?
It really is.
Women are allowed. If women are allowed, like I'm a man suggesting that women should not be allowed to do this, and it's not people, it's women.
Yeah.
And I think that's the incredibly important distinction. He doesn't care if people are questioning it; it's women.
Oh, there was a wonderful reply to that tweet. It was something like, I think gender identity is unscientific nonsense. Now I'll let you try to figure out what sex I am so you can determine whether I was allowed to say that or not. Wow.
That's an excellent observation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Excellently put.
Well, listen,
I had to retweet that. I was like, fuck yeah.
Here's another one. It was a Kishore Faulkner. Is that her name that you're talking about? Yes. Another reply was from Rachel Reese, who I believe Sarah Fillmore says is part of... Oh, no, not Sarah Fillmore, different Sarah, says that she's part of an organization called global butterflies who've trained many government departments and law firms. And this person, Rachel Reese, said, in response to the article about women must be heard on transgender identity, she said, I think trans people are going, which makes a mistake, going to start being killed on the UK. Thank you for lighting the fuse. Sorry, the grammar's all over the place.
Talking about that's never happening. This is
Thank you for
should have used Grammarly. Should have used Grammarly.
It's all over the place. You definitely didn't run it past Grammarly, but it's like such a they're so relaxed about with this kind of hyperbole. They're so relaxed about that. I really, every time I see him, I think the same thing. It's like, please, someone, just one person, sue them for this. Because it's such a horrific thing to accuse people of, and it's so such a disgusting lie. So sue them. Just one case. Luckily, I've got one going at the moment that might do a similar thing. But we'll see how that goes. But you know what I mean. I just don't understand why these people who have fairly exalted positions in life, they're informing, they're advising institutions, businesses, and they say something like this, that you're going to make it easy. There's going to be more trans people killed because you're standing up for women. It's just extraordinary.
It is. It is the most. I think one of the most extraordinary narratives of our day. This idea that women are and men, but mainly women, are killing people by simply saying
by saying no to men.
Sex is real. Yes, but essentially saying no to men. But it is quite the narrative that people are willing to actually put their names behind. Well, maybe they're anonymous names, but put their names behind and say, you are killing them. You are killing them.
Rachel Reese isn't an anonymous person. Rachel Reese is an actual person advising governments.
Yeah.
And the only good, I'll tell you one good thing. The best thing about the unisex toilets rule this week by the UK government is that there are, as I call them, a chaste strangio in every organisation in the UK.
Yeah.
The demanding pronouns, put your pronouns in your bio, in your email signatures, everyone has to do this now, or you're bigots, unisex toilets, and they have just cost their businesses a lot of money because they had to change them to unisex toilets, and now they're going to have to change them back.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I'm hoping that people will realize I'm kind of losing money by listening to these idiots,
Yeah.
Can I say, I think actually that the corporate environment is pushing the pronouns thing now, because academia and sort of public sector in terms of woke leftism is earlier than maybe the corporate sector. And I think some of the corporate sector is beginning to latch on and sort of pushing this idea of pronouns, etc., etc. But I'm not entirely certain that they're doing it from a place of anything other than sort of just sort of jumping on the bandwagon. I'm not entirely certain that they have all of the background.
Well, that's what I mean.
It doesn't mean it makes it better. In one way, it makes it worse.
No, absolutely.
Do this all the time.
Willing to push willing to go sort of jump on the bandwagon of an ideology that is sort of really hostile to women's rights, without even having much of an idea of background.
It totally speaks of the kind of casual knee-jerk misogyny of the whole of society. Artie, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, just exactly that. It's the combination of the casual knee-jerk misogyny that underpins it, and then just the idea that corporations fall for trends all the time and fads, because corporations are made up of people who have to justify their paychecks, right?
Yeah.
So they have to make work for themselves, and they have to make projects, and they have to find patterns, and they have to find trends and jump on them and get in front of them.
Yeah, because they also have a product to sell. They've got a product to push, and they've got what they believe a demographic to sell to.
And it's cheap. It's cheap and easy. Gay rights again. I feel like I'm so haunted by.
This is the new sort of zeitgeist that we're in,
and it's the new gay rights zeitgeist. So I feel very sad about how gay rights has done so much damage to all this. But I think gay rights was the most important movement. It saved my life, but something about it didn't quite go down. It wasn't truly understood. We didn't truly understand the issues. There were sort of shortcuts taken, perhaps, or people never truly understood what the issues were. They just understood the slogans and the superficial idea.
I know what you're saying, Artie. You're saying short-term solutions that are kind of biting us in the arse now.
And it's completely biting us in the ass, and it makes me feel so guilty as a gay person.
I actually think
that's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day.
The point is that the gay rights movement was essentially right. They were right.
Yeah.
And it's such a...
I think Artie's talking about things like tagging on the word phobia to things and stuff like
that kind of thing.
But but they've paved the way in a way that they never even considered. Because why would you? You're paving the way. You're breaking boundaries, and you do it because that's what you need. But obviously, what they couldn't have at all foreseen is that some other movements later on would come along and use the same rhetoric, the same tactics, and say, but more importantly, I think, and say, look, this is the same fight, and it's already won, and now you're just on the wrong side. And I had a big argument with a good friend of mine the other day about this, and instead of being able to, we were arguing about male people in women's sports. And he sort of changed it, and he sort of went right for the homophobic thing. And I was saying, look, if you're having to use a fight that's already been won to try and make your point, I think it means that the point you're actually trying to make is slightly weaker, and you know that it's slightly weaker, and you're unwilling to argue that because you're just going back to something that is already won. And I think that's danger. But the gay rights movement didn't know that this was going to happen, and and there's no blame on them for this.
But I think Artie's point is also useful in terms of thinking in terms of going forward with just every fight, with feminism, with any kind of ethical. I'm sure I think I've. I hate to admit it, but I'm sure I've taken ethical shortcuts in the past when there was an ideological enemy who I really hated, and I would hate. One of the reasons I always say I'd hate, I've got my Twitter archive, and I really, as I always say, the only thing I'm proud of is my what I did in this fight. The only thing I'm unequivocally proud of is what I did in this fight. Everything before this fight, I now look at through the lens of, well, was I being tribalistic? Was I just going with all my friends? Was I listening to people who I now realize are just the most dishonest, despicable, careerist liars that you can imagine? So I think you're right, Artie. I think we always have to, if we stick to certain ethical principles and maintain them, then long term, we won't keep having this happening. We won't be slapped around by people,
Yes, absolutely.
Harvey Weinstein saying we're producer phobic,
Can I just say one thing, Graham? I do also think that you should be proud of really small and far away.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Listen, I think we should leave it there because Helen is langered. Helen is langered. I'm getting there. And
I want to keep going. I think we should make this a super long one.
Oh no, I don't know. I thought let's cover it, let's talk about it, let's get out. I think what, things like this, you think they're great until they're suddenly not, and then the next thing it's just me, you, and one or two trolls left in the comments. So let's leave while the going's good.
Genevieve, you troll.
And listen, I have to say, as you say earlier, there was such a brilliant bunch of people here tonight. We had Karen as well of You're Kidding Right, who was in, and just loads of great people.
Yeah, and PM Berkeley was making some great points about how there's some parallels with feminism. And I guess
Tiffany, who we missed. Yeah. Tiffany,
and some lovely Welsh women, and PD Baseman, who I want to say hello to. I feel we've had such a lovely, the comments today has really felt like everyone's part of this whole conversation. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, I know. I want to switch it around. I want to be in the audience and watching them talking because I love that. These are like my favorite people in the whole world.
Well, that could be arranged, Artie. You have been getting little big for your boots recently. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We might have some exciting news at some point in the future, but we need to talk about it a little bit more, which we will, and then we'll get back to you about it. But something very different we might be doing. So, yeah, I'll leave you with that. Bye, everybody.